3 a.m. Vienna. Inside the sterile halls of the IAEA headquarters, the silence is shattered by a forensic telemetry report that renders decades of diplomacy obsolete. Environmental swipes from the Fordo Fuel Enrichment Plant have confirmed the unthinkable: U-235 particles enriched to a purity of 90.3%. The 90% threshold, the internationally recognized red line for weapons-grade material, has been breached. In the cold logic of nuclear physics, the breakout time has evaporated. We are no longer measuring the Iranian nuclear program in months or weeks. The mathematical reality is now 72 hours. The era of the political solution is dead. The era of kinetic reality has begun. At Negev Air Base, the response is already in motion. The F-35I, Adir, Israel's customized fifth-generation stealth platform, is no longer conducting sorties for surveillance. Satellite imagery reveals squadrons being fitted with specialized external fuel tanks and underbelly pylons designed for heavy-yield penetrators. The radar cross-section, RCS, of the Adir remains the lowest in the region, calculated at less than 0.0001 square meters from the frontal aspect, allowing it to ghost through the most dense integrated air defense systems on Earth. But the mission profile is a tactical nightmare. To reach Fordo, the IAF must traverse over 1,500 kilometers of contested airspace, carrying the weight of a world on its wings. The transition from 60% to 90% enrichment is not a linear progression, it is a geometric leap in lethality. At 90% highly enriched uranium, HU, the critical mass required for a nuclear detonation drops significantly, allowing for the miniaturization of a warhead. This is the physics of the point of no return. A warhead designed with 90% HU can be integrated into the nosecone of a Fada-1 hypersonic missile. This is not just a bomb, it is a delivery system that moves at speeds exceeding Mach 13. When kinetic energy is defined as EK equals 21 MV2, the velocity of a hypersonic vehicle creates a destructive force that no current interceptor can reliably neutralize. However, the target itself is a geological fortress. The Fordo enrichment halls are buried 80 meters beneath solid granite. Standard NATO bunker busters, like the GBU-31 JDAM, would merely scratch the surface. This facility was built to survive a direct hit from anything short of a tactical nuclear strike. It houses thousands of IR-6 centrifuges, machines that spin at supersonic speeds to separate isotopes. To stop the clock, Israel must not just hit the mountain, they must collapse the very veins of the facility. But as IAF planners finalize the target sets, a chilling intelligence report emerges from the shadows. The ghost centrifuges. Mossad signals intelligence suggests that the declared facilities at Natanz and Fordo are a distraction. A third, clandestine enrichment site, unmonitored, uninspected, and buried even deeper, is suspected to be operational. If the IAF strikes Fordo and misses the ghost site, they trigger a regional conflagration without actually neutralizing the nuclear threat. This is the strategic paradox: the more successful the surgical strike, the more certain the total war. While Israel prepares its blade, Iran has perfected its shield. But this shield is not composed of armor, it is composed of saturation math. Israel's multi-layer defense, the Arrow 3, David Sling, and the Iron Dome, is the most sophisticated in existence. Yet, every system has a saturation point. In a simulated salvo of 500 medium-range ballistic missiles, the probability of a leakage, PL, increases exponentially. If the Arrow 3 has a 95% intercept rate, a simultaneous launch of 100 missiles ensures that mathematically, 5 warheads will impact. If even one of those warheads carries a 90% HEU payload, the defense has failed. The threat is further complicated by the hypersonic gap. Iran's maneuverable re-entry vehicles, MARVs, do not follow a predictable ballistic arc. They skip along the upper atmosphere, changing trajectory at Mach 10. Standard X-band radar systems struggle to maintain a lock. Because the plasma sheath generated by the missile's heat signature absorbs radar waves. This is the thermal blind spot. By the time the interceptor is launched, the target has already shifted its position by several kilometers. The VLS, vertical launch system, cells of an Israeli destroyer or an Arrow battery become expensive spectators to a hypersonic impact. Then, there is the cost asymmetry of modern attrition. An Arrow 3 interceptor costs approximately $3 million per shot. A Shahed 136 suicide drone, used to swarm and deplete the radar's processing power, costs less than $30,000. Iran can launch 100 drones for the price of a single interceptor. It is an economic bleeding of the defense layers. Designed to leave the skies empty of interceptors when the heavy ballistic missiles finally arrive. But the most terrifying vulnerability isn't in the sky. It is in the wires. The internal fracture is a preemptive cyberstrike doctrine designed to precede any physical launch. By compromising Israel's civilian power grid and the SCADA systems governing water and emergency services, Iran aims to create a state of domestic paralysis. If the radar arrays lose primary power for even 60 seconds, the detection window closes. The F-35s would be flying blind into a sky filled with S-300 and Bavar 373 surface-to-air missiles. The 90% threshold has forced the hand of every player on the board. The countdown is no longer a warning, it is a countdown to the first strike. 6:30, Operation God's Hand, is no longer a theoretical exercise on a whiteboard in Tel Aviv. It is a live-mapped kinetic reality. 25 F-35I Adir fighters ingress at low altitudes, hugging the jagged topography of the Zagros Mountains to exploit the clutter in Iranian radar returns. Their flight path is a calculated violation of third-party sovereign airspace, utilizing a low observable corridor where the probability of detection, PD, is minimized to near zero. But the Adir faces a fundamental physical limitation: the internal weapon bays cannot house the GBU-57A-B massive ordnance penetrator, MOP. This is the bunker buster dilemma. To destroy Fordo, the IAF must deploy the 30,000-pound GBU-57, a weapon so massive it requires a modified heavy-lift platform, likely a non-stealth Boeing 707 or a strategic bomber variant. This heavy asset is a beacon on any radar screen. The mission relies entirely on the creation of an electronic fog. Israeli electronic warfare (EW) suites, operating at high gain power levels measured in hundreds of decibels, must saturate the Iranian S-300 and Bavar 373 arrays, creating ghost targets and noise floors so high the actual strike package becomes invisible within the static. As the GBU-57 is released, the kinetic math becomes terrifying. Falling from high altitude, the MOP accelerates toward terminal velocity. Upon impact, the reinforced cobalt steel tip must penetrate 80 meters of granite before the delayed action fuse ignites the 5,300 pounds explosive charge. The goal is a sympathetic collapse, using the mountain's own mass to crush the enrichment hulls. But as the simulation enters its final phase, the 9-minute hook reveals a grim, suicide mission reality. Even with a successful strike, the IAF's exit strategy is compromised. The fuel exhaustion rates, RF, for a high-intensity combat return, combined with the activation of 1,000 mobile SAM sites, project a 40% loss of the attacking fleet. Israel is not just trading missiles for centrifuges. They are trading their elite pilot corps for a temporary delay in the nuclear clock. The first explosion at Fordo will not be the end of the war. It will be the starting gun for a global economic cardiac arrest. Within 48 hours, the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most vital oil artery, will be closed. Iran's anti-access/area denial, A2/AD, doctrine involves the mass deployment of smart mines and anti-ship cruise missiles, ASCMs. Economic models project a 300% spike in global oil prices, reaching a catastrophic $200 per barrel. The global supply chain, already fragile, faces a total systemic collapse. On the northern border, the proxy trigger is pulled. Hezbollah, Iran's primary regional deterrent, possesses an arsenal of 150,000 rockets and precision-guided munitions, PGMs. This is not a guerrilla force, it is a mechanized division with more firepower than most NATO members. Their objective is the total saturation of the Galilee and the hole in the Israeli civilian defense. Under a 2,000 rocket per day salvo, the Israeli domestic economy shuts down. Every citizen enters a bomb shelter. The nation's GDP effectively hits zero as the military enters a multi-front struggle for survival. This is where the regional conflict becomes a superpower collision. A U.S. intervention to stabilize the IAF or clear the strait triggers the mutual defense protocols of the Russian-Iranian Defense Pact. We are no longer looking at a surgical strike. We are looking at the ignition of a multi-domain dominance struggle that spans from the cyber hubs of Northern Virginia to the satellite uplink stations in Siberia. The 90% threshold has effectively ended the shadow war and ushered in the preemptive era. The strategic deadlock is absolute. Military planners are left with a cold, binary choice: is a nuclear-armed Iran more dangerous than a regional war today? The math suggests that the window for a clean strike has closed forever. Every option leads to fire. The 90% breach has stripped away the luxury of time, leaving only the raw logic of the first strike. But while the world watches the centrifuges at Fordo, they may be looking at the wrong target. The ultimate deterrent is not always found in the air. If the Adir squadrons fail, Israel has one final, unspoken card to play. A weapon system that has never been officially acknowledged, hidden in the depths of the Negev. Next episode, Project Jericho, the secret of the Negev's counterstrike.